On the night of September 7th, darkness will want to enter your house. Stars, listen carefully to these words, because they are not mine. They are an echo of what heaven has already revealed. This day is not just any number on the calendar. It is a threshold, a point marked from on high as a warning. The Virgin and Saint Michael have spoken, and what they announced cannot be taken lightly. The spiritual battle is not a distant concept, not an abstract idea. It is real, and September 7th marks the beginning of a time of purification and testing. The warning is clear: darkness will cover the earth, not in a natural way, but in a spiritual way. It will be a veil that will seek to enter homes, hearts, and families. Many will laugh, many will say that these are exaggerations, that nothing will happen. But those who ignore the voice from heaven have always been caught unaware, and those who listen, those who obey, always find refuge. Saint Michael, the defender of God's people, spoke firmly, "The battle is no longer far away, it is at the door. Do not fear the visible armies, fear the indifference that weakens the soul. Do not fear the noise of the wars of this world, fear the silence of a home without prayer." Lights, these words must resonate within us as an urgent call. This is not empty fear, but preparation. The enemy will not attack first with weapons or armies, but rather by seeking to enter deeply into our homes, our families, our faith. The Virgin, with maternal tenderness, gave us the secret to endurance. 3 steps, seemingly simple but spiritually powerful. Pray the rosary together as a family. Light a blessed candle that burns as a sign of Christ's light in the midst of darkness. Proclaim out loud, "This house is under your mantle, Mother." This isn't superstition, but obedience. Heaven doesn't give instructions in vain. Every act of faith opens doors to protection. Every spoken word is like a wall raised against the enemy. That's why I want to ask you, my friends, for something concrete. Don't wait until the end of the video. Don't let this moment pass you by. Go to the comments right now and write, "This house is under your cloak, Mother." It's not just a comment. It's a public declaration of faith. Writing it here is like proclaiming it out loud. And when you do, you'll not only be protecting your home, you'll be lighting a spark that will illuminate other people who read those words. Think about what it means. Thousands of voices united, thousands of homes proclaiming the same thing, thousands of stars sealing their homes under the mantle of the Virgin. That unity is more powerful than any attack from the enemy. September 7th will not be a day of terror for the faithful, but a day of decision. For some, the darkness will be confusion and fear. For others, it will be a trial overcome with faith and courage. The Virgin does not leave us alone. Saint Michael does not wield his sword in vain. They have already risen to protect those who obey. Stars, let me ask you, are you ready for that night? Do you already have the rosary in your hands, the candle blessed in your homes, and faith lit in your hearts? Answer in the comments, because every response strengthens this entire spiritual family. Heaven asks us for purification. I'm not just talking about external gestures, but about a profound change. It's a time of reconciliation in families, of sincere forgiveness, of abandoning the vices that chain us, of leaving lukewarmness behind. September 7th isn't about fear, it's about returning with a clean heart, ready to withstand the test. Lights, I want you to understand that the darkness that is coming is not definitive. It is strong, yes, but limited. It will only enter where it finds open doors, and you have the power to close those doors with prayer, with faith, with obedience. That's why I'm asking you again today, write your protective phrase in the comments. Write it not just once, but as many times as your heart feels like. Every written word is a wall, every letter is a brick of light that protects your life and your family. This house is under your cloak, Mother. Repeat it, proclaim it, write it down, make it a part of you. because when the night of trial comes, those words will resonate in the spiritual realm like a cry that repels the darkness. And don't forget this. Our Lady promised that no family that obeys will be left abandoned. Not one. That promise must be the strength that sustains your hearts. September 7th is not the end, it's the beginning. It marks the beginning of a time in which the faithful will be tested, but also strengthened. And you, my lights, have been called to be awake, to be beacons in the midst of the storm, to not hide the light you carry within. So don't close your hearts. Don't treat this as a distant story. This is the time to decide. This is the time to proclaim. This is the time to seal your homes under the mantle of the Mother. And while you do so, I want to leave you with a question that will be the bridge to what is to come. What will happen after that night, when the darkness has tried to enter and those who obeyed are standing under the protection of the Virgin? That, my stars, will be the mystery of September 8th. My stars, September 8th dawned like any other day. The sun rose, the streets filled with noise, and the routine returned to its normal routine. Many thought, nothing happened, everything is the same. But what they don't understand is that the most dangerous thing isn't the storm that makes noise, but the silence that prepares for its arrival. The Virgin and St. Michael had warned us that September 7th would be the threshold, and that from that night on, something would begin to stir in the invisible. And so it did. The world seemed to continue, but the spiritual atmosphere changed. Sensitive hearts began to feel it, a restlessness, a tension, an inner calling that kept us from sleeping peacefully. This day is not to lower our guard, my stars, but to raise it even higher. For while men speak of peace and security, the battle is being organized in the heavens, and we, seemingly small, are in the midst of that movement. September 8th isn't about spectacle, it's not about visible signs that everyone can see, it's about discernment. It's the day when heaven observes who remains faithful after heeding the warning and who falls asleep again in indifference. I want to ask you something very directly. Did you feel anything different after September 7th? Did you feel that restlessness, that weight in the air, that urgency to pray harder? Write in the comments, I feel the urgency. I am awake. Because that phrase isn't just a comment, it's an act of resistance. Declaring that you're awake is committing yourself before heaven not to turn back, to keeping your lamp lit even if the whole world falls asleep. Lights, today more than ever, we must understand that the battle is not fought with human weapons. It's not about shouting, arguing, or fighting with empty words. It's about remaining in prayer, not letting go of the rosary, and maintaining faith even when everything seems the same. Because it is precisely in this everything being the same that many fall into the enemy's trap. St. Michael showed us that the enemy doesn't always attack with noise. He often attacks with distraction, with fatigue, with routine. He wants us to think nothing is happening, so we'll let our guard down, and when we let our guard down, then he attacks. Therefore, my stars, this day is crucial. September 8th is the test of fidelity in small things. If we obey in calm, we will be strong in the storm. If we persevere in silence, we will endure in the noise. I want you to proclaim it yourselves in the comments. I will not let my guard down, my lamp will remain lit. Every time someone writes this, they strengthen another light. Each statement is like an army of small voices rising amidst the world's indifference. And while some laugh, we resist. While some forget, we remember. While some remain silent, we proclaim. September 8th isn't the end of anything. It's just the beginning of a time that will become increasingly intense. And you, stars, have been called to live it awake, with your hearts attentive, with your eyes fixed on heaven. Remember the words of the Virgin. Do not fear the darkness that advances. Fear the indifference that extinguishes faith. Lucaros, I know some of you are reading this with tears in your eyes. Others feel a lump in your throat because you know that what I'm saying is no coincidence, that these words are for you. Don't resist that emotion. It's the Spirit touching your inner being. It's the Mother reminding you that you are hers, that she hasn't abandoned you. But I also know that some feel fear, and that's okay. Fear isn't a sign of defeat. It's a sign that you're aware of the battle. What matters is what you decide to do with that fear. Will it paralyze you or push you to take refuge under the mantle of the Virgin? September 8th is just that, decision-making in small ways. You may not see visible changes, but much is being decided in the invisible, and you, my star, cannot be left out. That's why I ask you again, write in the comments right now the phrase that heaven hopes to hear from its children. I will not let my guard down, my lamp will remain lit. Udi, when the day of the real test comes, those words will be engraved in your heart. And here, I leave you with a question that will open the door for what is to come. If September 7th was the threshold and the 8th the silence before the movement, what will happen when the first visible sign appears on the horizon? On the night of September 7th, the world will believe that everything remains the same, but in the invisible, nothing will be the same. Stars, listen carefully, because this day has been marked on high for a long time. It is not a simple number on the calendar. It is not a coincidence. September 7th is a threshold, a spiritual boundary, a day when heaven and earth look face to face. The Virgin and Saint Michael have warned that this day is preparation before the battle, and those who understand this will be able to withstand what comes next. The greatest danger will not be the noise, but the apparent calm. Many will say nothing has happened, everything is the same, and therein lies the trap, because what begins on September 7th is not a spectacle visible to everyone, but a profound movement in the spirit. That day decides who is awake and who remains asleep. Saint Michael, in his warrior's voice, said it this way: the enemy doesn't always strike with a thunderous sound. He often advances silently, seeking to enter homes that are not vigilant. And the Virgin as Mother added with tenderness and firmness, my children, do not fear the noise outside, fear the emptiness of a lukewarm heart. Do not fear the darkness outside, fear the indifference that extinguishes faith within. Stars, this day is not about senseless fear, it's about preparation, and that's why heaven asks us for concrete signs of faith. It's not enough to listen. We must proclaim, we must act, we must seal our homes under the mantle of the Mother. Today, I want to ask you something very specific. Go to the comments right now and write this protective phrase. This house is under your cloak, Mother. When you write this, you not only confess it here, but you seal it in the invisible. Every word proclaimed is like a wall erected against the enemy, and when a bright star writes this sentence, it also ignites the faith of another who will read it. Imagine what it means, hundreds, thousands of comments proclaiming the same thing, like an echo piercing the darkness. Every written word is a lit candle, every testimony is a raised rosary, every declaration is a shield against the darkness. September 7th is not the end, it's the beginning. It's the day heaven examines hearts. Who watches? Who prays? Who proclaims? Who writes with faith what the Virgin asks? Luceros, I want you to tell me in the comments, are you willing to stand firm in the midst of silence? Are you ready to proclaim that your home belongs to the Virgin? Because what comes after this day will be bigger, stronger, more demanding. The 7th is merely the threshold, the antechamber, and we must cross it with a burning heart. Always remember this: there is no neutrality in the spiritual battle. You are either under the mantle of the Virgin or you are vulnerable to darkness. There is no middle ground. That's why I insist, my stars, write the phrase, declare it with faith, make it part of you. This house is under your cloak, Mother. That is the shield that prepares us. That is the key that unlocks protection. That is the sign that we belong to the light and not to the darkness. And I want you to think carefully. If September 7th is preparation, what comes next? What secret do the Virgin and Saint Michael hold that we haven't yet revealed? Stars, do not miss what is to come. What you will hear in the next part is the core of the warning, the revelation that many are not ready to accept, but that you, as stars, have been called to receive. A night will come when the darkness will not be as you know it, because it will not be just darkness, it will be spirits seeking a place to enter. Stars, the time has come. For days, for nights, we kept the suspense. I told you there was a secret kept, a message that could not be revealed before its time. And now you, my stars, are going to hear it, the prophecy that the Virgin and St. Michael delivered for our time. Heaven spoke, and it did so with firm words. The Virgin warned, hours of darkness will come and sweep across the earth. It will not be a simple absence of light. It will be the presence of darkness. Evil spirits will walk, seeking open doors in homes and hearts, and only those who are under my mantle will resist. St. Michael the Defender confirmed the warning with a fiery voice. The battle will not begin in the fields or in the cities. It will begin inside the homes. The enemy will first seek families. If he destroys homes, he will have defeated nations. Stars, the prophecy is clear. There will be a night when darkness will try to enter every home. There will be no sound of armies, no signals on the news. It will be silent, it will be invisible, and at that moment those who believe will be distinguished from those who doubt, those who pray from those who remain silent, those who proclaim from those who hide. The Virgin gave us the 3 weapons of protection. Pray the rosary as a family. Light a blessed candle as a sign of living light. Proclaim out loud, "This house is under your mantle, Mother." It's not an empty symbol. It's not a meaningless tradition. It's the shield that closes the doors to the enemy. Where these 3 things are done with faith, darkness cannot enter. That's why today I want to ask you something stronger than ever. Go now to the comments and write with determination, "This house is under your cloak, Mother." Write it not just as a phrase, but as a covenant, as a declaration of faith, as a spiritual cry. Every time one of you writes it, it's as if a flame were lit on the map of the world, and the more stars proclaim it, the stronger the wall of light we build against the darkness. The Virgin added something that moved those who listened. No family that obeys will be left helpless. Not one. Not the little ones, not the elderly, not those who feel they have no strength. If they take refuge under my mantle, they will endure. Stars, I want you to understand this clearly. This is not about superstition. This is not about magic. It's about obedience. The enemy cannot touch where heaven has placed a seal, and we place that seal with prayer, with the light of a candle, with the proclamation of faith. That's why I insist once again, write in the comments, proclaim with your own hand the phrase that protects you. This house is under your cloak, Mother. Imagine the power of thousands of bright stars writing the same thing. Imagine how the darkness recedes when it sees that it finds no silence, no warmth, no fear, but an army of burning souls proclaiming with one voice. Saint Michael confirmed this. The enemy trembles not before the strong of this world, but before the little ones who pray with faith. They tremble not before metal weapons, but before the houses sealed under the mantle of the Mother. Stars, this is the prophecy. A night of trial, a night in which darkness will seek to enter. And you already have the weapons, you already know the secret. Don't wait until the last moment. Prepare now. Have your rosary, your blessed candle, your living faith. I want to ask you something very clearly. Are you willing to proclaim this phrase every day in your homes? Are you ready for your home to be a beacon of light in the midst of darkness? Answer in the comments, because your words are a testimony and strength for everyone. Remember what the Virgin Mary said, "Do not be afraid. The darkness will pass, but my children will remain if they trust in me." September 7th was the threshold. Today, you already know what's at stake. But what comes next, my friends, will be even greater because the prophecy doesn't end here. What we have revealed today is only the first part of the secret, and the question that remains is this: what will happen when darkness confronts the homes sealed under the mantle of the Virgin? Darkness will knock on the doors, but it will not be able to enter where the mantle of the Mother is invoked. Stars, what happened after that night marked a before and after in the spiritual history of humanity. Not everyone saw it, not everyone understood it, but those who obeyed, those who remained steadfast, know what I'm talking about. As darkness fell, the silence became heavy. Outside, many felt fear, many ran aimlessly, many opened doors in desperation. But in the homes sealed under the Virgin's mantle, something different happened. Terror did not enter, chaos did not enter. There, a mysterious peace descended, as if an invisible barrier surrounded the houses. Entire families prayed the rosary with tears, holding the blessed candle that never went out despite the tension in the air. And every time they forcefully proclaimed, "This house is under your mantle, Mother," it was as if an invisible wall of fire rose up around them. Luceros, I want you to proclaim it yourselves in the comments now. My lamp is still lit, my house is under the Mother's mantle. Because those words aren't just for show, they're a declaration of war against the darkness, and every bright star who writes them joins that army that no longer remains silent. Some witnesses reported hearing strange noises outside their homes that night. Voices whispering, shadows passing by the windows, doors shaking as if someone were knocking outside, but they were never able to enter. They never crossed the threshold where the Virgin had been invoked. Others said they felt such fear that it almost paralyzed them. But when they took the rosary in their hands, their fear transformed into strength. It was as if each Hail Mary was a flash of light that drove away the darkness. Stars, do you realize what this means? They weren't human armies, they weren't visible weapons, they were ordinary families like yours, like mine, who decided to obey and trust. And those families became fortresses, bastions of light, living refugees in the midst of chaos. I want you to tell me in the comments, what would you do if darkness knocked at your door? Would you open it out of fear, or would you proclaim with force that your house is under Mary's mantle? Write it down, because your decision inspires others. St. Michael, in a vision to some faithful, was seen roaming the streets. His sword was blazing, and every time he found a sealed home, he spread his wings over it. And every time he found a home devoid of faith, the enemy easily entered. The difference was not in the outward appearance of the house, but in the interior of their hearts. That night proved that it doesn't matter how rich or poor a family is. It doesn't matter if the house is big or small. What matters is whether it was protected by prayer, by blessed light, by the proclamation of faith. Luceros, I want you to go back to the comments and write decisively. Saint Michael protects my home. The Virgin covers my family. Every comment is a testimony. Every word is a seal. Don't let this video pass as just another one. Turn this space into a wall of declarations of faith. What happened after that night was even more impressive. The homes that obeyed not only endured, but began to radiate light to others. Neighbors who had mocked, who had doubted, came forward, seeking refuge. And many of them found faith for the first time, seeing something inexplicable happening in those homes. Thus began a silent awakening. Not in packed churches, not in public speeches, but in small homes that became beacons of hope. And that was the greatest victory. The darkness failed to extinguish faith. On the contrary, it multiplied it. But my dear, this is not the end. What happened that night was just the first shock. Heaven had already warned that after this trial, stronger signs would come, visible even to those who do not believe. The enemy will not stop, but neither will the light. And here I want to leave you with a question that will open the next part. If darkness couldn't enter the sealed homes, what will it do now to try to break the faith of the Virgin's children? When darkness can't enter homes, it seeks to enter hearts. Luceros, what happened after the night of darkness surprised many. The enemy, defeated by being unable to penetrate the homes sealed under the Virgin's mantle, did not give up. They changed their strategy. If they couldn't enter from outside, they would try to do so from within. The testimonies of those who lived through that night coincide. In the days that followed, a different battle began. It was no longer knocking on doors or shadows in windows. It was a silent attack on the interior of souls, thoughts of doubt, spiritual fatigue, divisions in families, temptations disguised as normality. The Virgin had warned, after the night will come the most subtle test. Many will believe that everything is over and will let their guard down. That is when the enemy will seek to sow discord, fear, and despair. Saint Michael confirmed it with a firm voice. He who cannot conquer with noise will try to do so with silence. He who cannot conquer with external fear will seek to conquer with internal lukewarmness. Luceros, I want to ask you, have you ever felt that battle within yourselves, that tiredness that seems inexplicable, that doubt that suddenly arrives, that division that arises in the family for no apparent reason? If you've experienced it, write it in the comments. I also fight within myself, but I will not give up. Because sharing that struggle is recognizing that we are not alone. Every light that confesses their battle becomes an example for others. And every statement written here is like a spear that wounds the enemy. After the night of darkness, many homes began to experience internal tensions. Parents against children, siblings against siblings, arguments that sprang up out of nowhere. It was as if a shadow was trying to enter not through the door, but through the heart. And at that moment it became clear the spiritual battle wasn't over, it had merely shifted sides. Stars. This is where we understand the importance of not letting our guard down. Lighting a candle and praying a rosary at night is a powerful act, but maintaining faith in our daily routine is even more decisive. The enemy knows that perseverance is the hardest test. That's why today, I want you to write this phrase in the comments. I will not let my guard down. My faith will be constant. Repeat it, write it, declare it, because that is the response heaven expects from us. The enemy wants us to forget what we experienced, to let the impact of that night dissolve into routine. But the stars don't forget. The stars remain. Saint Michael showed some in a vision that after the night of darkness, darkness began to surround weak hearts with whispers. Whispers that said, "Why pray? Nothing happened. Why go on? Everything remains the same. Why struggle? Better to rest." And many began to give in. But in the homes that remained steadfast, the Virgin Mary once again manifested herself with tenderness. In dreams, in small signs, in the strength to move forward. And those homes became even stronger beacons because they understood that the battle wasn't one of a single night, but of every day. Stars, do not underestimate the enemy. If he cannot enter your homes, he will try to enter your thoughts. If he cannot overcome you with fear, he will try to do so with distraction. If he cannot break you from the outside, he will try to sow division from within. That's why it's key to maintain daily prayer, constant proclamation, and the light always on. And here I ask you again, go to the comments and write with force. My home belongs to the Virgin. My heart will not give in. Every time this sentence is written, heaven smiles and the enemy trembles, because there is no stronger weapon than a faithful son who refuses to surrender. Stars, what we experienced after the night was just the beginning of a more intense phase. The enemy changed his strategy, yes, but so did heaven. And the Virgin Mary had already said that she would not leave those who persevered alone. Therefore, while the enemy sows doubt, heaven begins to prepare an even greater sign, a manifestation that no one can deny. And here I leave you with this question that will open the door for what's to come. If the enemy hasn't been able to enter homes and is now silently attacking hearts, what will heaven do to show that its victory is definitive? When darkness believes it has silently won, heaven shakes the earth with a sign no one can deny. Lucifer, what happened after the enemy's counterattack cannot be explained with human words. Many had begun to feel tired, doubtful, and divided. The enemy seemed to infiltrate thoughts, hearts, and families. But just at that moment, when the faith of some was beginning to waver, heaven decided to speak with a force impossible to ignore. The Virgin had promised, "I will not leave you alone. After the night, after the silence, the sign will come that will open the eyes of many." And so it was. A different dawn covered the earth. The sky, which should have been clear, dawned tinged with a strange glow, as if the sun had stopped behind a veil. The air became dense, and those praying felt in their hearts that something was about to manifest. It was then that the sign appeared. In different parts of the world, people began to look up at the firmament and saw the same thing, a light in the form of a fiery sword piercing the sky from one end to the other. It wasn't human fire, it wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was the sword of Saint Michael, shining over the nations. Stars, that was the confirmation that the battle was no illusion. It was heaven responding to the enemy with power. Saint Michael the defender raised his sword to say, "I am here, I fight for you, do not fear." But it wasn't just the sword. Beside it, an inner voice shook those praying, the voice of the Virgin Mary saying, "Remain faithful. My mantle covers those who proclaim my name. Do not give up, for victory has already begun." Luceros, I want you to proclaim in the comments what that vision means. Right now, Saint Michael fights for us. The Virgin covers us with her mantle. Every time a star writes this, it reminds the enemy that we don't fight alone, that there's an invisible army fighting for us. Some witnesses said that upon seeing the sword in the sky, they felt a warmth in their chests, as if a flame had ignited their hearts. Others, whose faith was weak, fell to their knees weeping, convinced that what they had doubted was real. Even those who didn't believe were paralyzed, unable to deny that something supernatural was happening. That sign was the beginning of a new awakening. Multitudes began to seek refuge, entire families resumed prayer, and young people who had never prayed raised their voices to heaven. It was as if the sword of Saint Michael pierced not only heaven, but also souls, cutting through lukewarmness and igniting faith. Stars, do you understand what this means? The enemy had tried to infiltrate silently, but the sky responded with a scream. And that scream was etched in everyone's memory. That's why I want you to proclaim this other phrase in the comments. I am not afraid, for heaven fights for me. Write it, repeat it, share it. Every word is an act of resistance. The visible sign also brought division. Some opened themselves to faith, others hardened their hearts. As in ancient times when Israel saw miracles in the desert, some bowed down in worship, while others rebelled even more. Such is the nature of the battle. The same sign that saves some condemns others. But for the stars, the sign was confirmation. It was like hearing heaven say, "Keep going. The road is hard, but you are not alone." Me, after the sign, small miracles began to appear in different homes, sick people recovering, people who had lost hope finding solace, reconciliations in broken families. The sword flashing in the sky wasn't just a vision, it was a key that opened a new era. However, it was also a warning. The worst was yet to come. Because if the heavens showed their strength, it was because the enemy was preparing something greater. The sign was both a warning and a consolation. Stars, I want you to answer me in the comments. What would you do if you saw St. Michael's sword in the sky? Would you run away in fear or proclaim that the Virgin Mary is covering you? Write it down because your words are preparation. That sign wasn't an end. It was a beginning, a light that pierced the darkness to remind us that we are in the midst of a real battle. And what comes after it will be even stronger, more demanding, more definitive. Heaven has already spoken. The enemy has already counterattacked. The sword has already flashed. The question remains, what will happen now when the invisible becomes visible and the whole world must choose which side to take? The same sign from heaven can awaken faith in some and provoke rebellion in others. After the visible sign in the firmament, all of humanity was shaken. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It wasn't an eclipse or the northern lights. St. Michael's fiery sword piercing the sky couldn't be explained scientifically. It was a direct message, a cry from heaven that no one could ignore. But the most surprising thing wasn't the sign itself, but the reactions it provoked. In many homes, tears flowed instantly. Entire families knelt, raised the rosary, and began to pray with a fervor they had never known before. Mothers hugged their children, fathers asked forgiveness for their mistakes. Young people who had previously ridiculed the faith prostrated themselves in silence. For them, the sign was confirmation, it was victory, it was refuge. But not everyone reacted the same way. Elsewhere, many people's hearts hardened. Some cried out to heaven in rage, accusing manipulation, seeking explanations that would deny the obvious. Others mocked, saying it was a collective illusion, that there was nothing divine about what they had seen, and worse still, there were those who decided to rebel even further, defying the warning, giving themselves over to sin with greater intensity. Stars, here the ancient saying was fulfilled. The same sun that melts wax hardens clay. The sign that illuminated many also darkened others. I want to ask you directly, what do you think you would do at that moment? Write it in the comments with faith. If heaven shows me its sign, I will kneel and proclaim the truth. Because declaring this now is preparation for when the time of testing comes. Testimonies began to circulate. There were those who saw the sword and heard a whisper in their hearts, "Come back to me, there is still time." And they obeyed. Others, however, felt the same voice but rejected it, like someone who closes their ears to avoid hearing what bothers them. In entire communities, the division became evident. Some lit candles, others angrily snuffed them out. Some searched for the rosary, others tore it to pieces. Some filled the churches, others closed their doors. The sign left no one indifferent. Luteros, I want you to write another phrase of faith in the comments to seal your decision. Even if the world is divided, I will be under the mantle of the Virgin. Write this down with force, because we are living in times where lukewarmness no longer exists. You either stand with the light or you stand with the darkness. St. Michael appeared again to some in a vision, saying, "Do not fear division, for it must happen. The wheat is separated from the chaff, the light from the darkness. You stand firm, for the enemy will try to drag away even the elect." These words shook many because they confirmed that the battle was not over. On the contrary, it was just beginning. The Virgin also spoke sweetly, saying, "My children, do not be scandalized by those who rebel. Pray for them. Do not judge them. Intercede. For many who blaspheme today will fall to their knees tomorrow." Stars, here lies the greatness of this time. It's not enough to receive the signal. We must decide what to do with it. And that decision divides. It divides families, it divides peoples, it divides hearts. But you, my stars, already know the truth. So I ask you again, go to the comments and proclaim with determination, I am a beacon of light. I will not retreat before the darkness. Every written word is a beacon that guides another brother. Every declaration is a blow against the enemy. Do not underestimate the power of what you proclaim. After the sign, some began to persecute those who believed. Mockery, insults, rejection. In schools, at work, on the streets, the faithful were seen as crazy. But the surprising thing was that, instead of remaining silent, they began to multiply. Faith, instead of fading, burned brighter. Stars, do you understand what this means? The sword in the sky wasn't an idle spectacle. It was the beginning of an inevitable division, where each soul must choose which side to be on. And here I leave open the question that will lead us to what follows. If the sign has already divided hearts, what will the enemy do now to try to silence the voice of the faithful? When the sign from heaven divides humanity, those who remain in the light become targets of darkness. Lucifer's. What followed the great sign was a wave of persecution unseen in generations. St. Michael's sword in the sky had awakened millions, ignited faith in lukewarm hearts, and opened the eyes of those who had slept. But that same sword also ignited the fury of those who refused to accept the truth. Rejection began in entire cities. Those who knelt to pray were ridiculed in the streets. Families who lit a blessed candle were labeled fanatics. Young people who proclaimed the phrase, "This house is under your mantle, mother," were ostracized, mocked, and even beaten for refusing to remain silent about their faith. Lucifer's, "Here is fulfilled what the Virgin had said. The world will hate you because you are not of the world. But do not fear, for I am with you." The enemy, unable to enter protected homes, began to use hardened hearts to attack from outside. And so laws, mockery, divisions, and even violence against the faithful arose. The persecution was not only spiritual, it was also social. I want to ask you directly, would you be willing to endure rejection, ridicule, even persecution for remaining faithful under the mantle of the Virgin? Write it in the comments with courage. I will not deny my faith, even if the world persecutes me. That phrase, proclaimed here, is an act of courage. Every star who writes it joins an invisible army that never gives up. Testimonies of this persecution began to multiply. In some places, entire groups of families were expelled from their communities for continuing to pray the rosary. In others, they were forbidden to light their blessed candles, as if the light of Christ were a danger. But the obedient stars did not stop. In the darkness, in silence, they continued to pray, and the more they were attacked, the stronger their faith became. St. Michael appeared to some in a vision, saying, "Persecution is not defeat, it is confirmation." The enemy does not attack what he does not fear. If they persecute you, it is because you shine. If they hate you, it is because your light makes the darkness uncomfortable. Luceros, I want you to proclaim another truth in the comments. If you chase me for the light, I will shine even brighter. This declaration isn't just words, it's an open challenge to the enemy. Because every time someone proclaims it, heaven smiles and the Virgin Mary extends her mantle of protection ever wider. The persecution was harsh. There were tears, there were losses, there were betrayals even within families. Some who couldn't bear the weight gave up. Others denied the faith to be accepted by the world. But the stars, though small and despised, remained. The Virgin had said it clearly. Many will confess me with their lips, but deny me with their actions. Others will deny me with their lips, but continue to pray in secret. But blessed are those who confess me publicly and privately, for in them my Son will be glorified. Lucifer's, the price of fidelity is high, but the reward is eternal. And here, I want to leave you with another question. What would you be willing to lose by not denying the Virgin and Saint Michael? Your reputation, your comfort, even your safety? Write it down, because every answer is a seed of strength. In the midst of the persecution, mysterious things began to happen. Some stars who were arrested or beaten were inexplicably freed while praying. In homes destroyed by hatred, signs of peace appeared. The scent of flowers, soft lights, comforting voices in the middle of the night. It was the Virgin reminding us that, even though the world may persecute, heaven never abandons us. But the persecution wasn't the end, it was merely the second wave. Because after dividing humanity and attacking the faithful, the enemy was preparing something even greater. A false sign, a deception designed to confuse even those who had resisted. Luceros, before closing this section, I want to ask you once again, go to the comments and write with burning faith. I am the star of the Virgin, and nothing will make me back down. Write it, proclaim it, declare it, because persecution cannot extinguish what heaven has set ablaze. And here I leave you with the question that opens the next section. If the enemy failed to win with darkness and persecution, what will he do now, raising such a great deception that even the faithful will have to discern every step? When heaven showed its sword, the enemy raised his own light to confound hearts. Stars, what came after the persecution was even more dangerous than mockery, rejection, and violence. Because the enemy, seeing that he could not destroy the faithful or break the sealed homes, decided to use his most ancient weapon, lies. And he did it not in the shadows, but in the guise of light. The world had just witnessed Saint Michael's sword shining in the sky, a glorious sign that ignited the faith of millions. But soon after, another sign appeared, a strange blazing light that spread seductively across the heavens. Many looked at it and said, "Heaven is speaking to us again." But it wasn't heaven. It was the enemy in disguise. St. Michael had warned, the adversary will disguise himself as an angel of light to deceive even the elect. Not every sign comes from heaven. Not every splendor brings peace. The enemy will imitate to confuse. And so it happened. The false sign seemed even more impressive than the true one. Lights dancing in the sky, bright colors, figures that seemed to form messages. But instead of bringing peace, they brought confusion. Instead of awakening prayer, they aroused empty fascination. Instead of bringing God closer, they brought human pride closer. Stars, this is where many began to fall. Some who had resisted persecution were seduced by the false sign. They said, "This also is from God." And little by little they stopped praying, stopped proclaiming, stopped obeying. They exchanged the sword of heaven for the glare of deception. I want to ask you directly, would you be able to discern between true light and false light? Would you know how to recognize when the enemy disguises himself as an angel of light? Write it forcefully in the comments. I will not follow false signs. My guide is the Virgin. Every time they proclaim this, they close a door to deception, for the enemy fears not so much those who attack him with hatred, but those who remain steadfast in the truth, undeceived. The Virgin spoke to humble hearts, saying, "Do not look for signs in the heavens, but seek my voice in prayer. Do not be carried away by passing lights. Remain under my mantle. Whoever listens to me will not be confused." Stars, understand this. The false sign did not come for unbelievers, it came for believers. The enemy wastes no time on those who already belong to him. His goal was to confuse the stars, distract the faithful, and break the unity of the spiritual army. And he succeeded in part. Some began to divide. Some said, "Let's follow the Virgin, let's pray the rosary, let's obey what has already been revealed." Others, fascinated by the false brilliance, said, "No, this is the new light, this is the new path." And so the community began to fracture. St. Michael spoke again in a vision. The enemy cannot extinguish the true light, but he can raise up imitations to distract. He who clings to the rosary, to the mantle of the mother, to the fire of prayer will not be lost, but he who seeks spectacle will fall into deception. Luceros, I want you to write another declaration of faith in the comments now. I am the Virgin Star. I will not be fooled by imitations. Escribanlo, proclamenlo, compartanlo. Because every word written here strengthens another brother who perhaps doubts. The false sign didn't bring peace. At first it dazzled, but then it began to sow chaos. People who followed it experienced unrest, divisions in their homes, and despair instead of comfort. It was the most dangerous test, a sign that seemed good, but whose fruit was confusion. The Virgin had said, "You will know them by their fruits." The tree that causes confusion does not come from me. The tree that gives peace, prayer, and conversion, that is the true one. Many were swept away. But those who remained faithful didn't look to the sky for light. They looked to the rosary in their hands. They looked to the lit blessed candle. They looked to the Virgin in prayer. And there they found true peace. That was the big difference. Some sought spectacle, others remained silent under the cloak, and the latter were the ones who resisted. But the battle didn't end with the false sign. After the deception, the enemy planned something else, to raise up a visible leader, a false shepherd who would lead multitudes into confusion. Luceros, before closing this part, I want you to write in the comments with all your faith, I will follow Christ alone, under the mantle of the Virgin. That is the statement that breaks the chains of deception. And I leave you with this question that opens the next section. If the enemy has already shown a false sign to deceive, what will happen when he raises up a false guide to lead entire multitudes into error? When false signs are no longer enough, the enemy raises up a man who speaks like a lamb but roars like a dragon. Stars, after the night of darkness, after the persecution, and after the false sign, came the most dangerous stage of all, the appearance of the false guide. A leader who emerged in the midst of global confusion, speaking sweet words, promising peace, promising unity, promising solutions to the problems that tormented humanity. But behind his smile lurked the poison of deception. The world, weary of wars, divided by signs and torn between light and darkness, welcomed him as a savior. His speeches were convincing, his gestures humble, his gaze captivated the crowds, and many, even some who had resisted until that moment, began to follow him. St. Michael had warned, a guide will come who will present himself as a defender of humanity, but his heart will be an instrument of the enemy. His word will attract multitudes, but his voice will be a disguised lie. The Virgin also spoke of him. My children, do not be seduced by those who proclaim peace without God, by those who promise unity without the cross. Whoever does not recognize me as mother and does not proclaim my Son as Lord does not come from heaven. Luceros, I want you to respond bravely in the comments. I will not follow the false guide. I will follow Christ under the mantle of Mary. Write this down now, because every statement is an act of resistance. The false leader began to gain ground. With apparent charity, with theatrical gestures of kindness, he attracted world leaders, weary multitudes, and entire peoples seeking hope. His words were like honey, but his fruits were division, control, and lies. Some faithful began to doubt. What if this is the one sent? They wondered. But the divine lights knew how to discern, for while he spoke of peace, he forbade the rosary. While he spoke of unity, he attacked faithful families. While he spoke of love, he denied the cross. Stars, understand this. The enemy doesn't appear with horns and fire. He appears in sheep's clothing, with a soft voice, with empty promises. That's why the Virgin asks us to remain vigilant. Saint Michael appeared in a vision, raising his sword and saying, "The true guide has already been given, Christ. Do not seek another. The enemy will raise imitations, but you remain steadfast in prayer, for he who cannot destroy from without will attempt to guide from within." That's why today I want you to write in the comments this phrase that breaks the power of the false guide. Christ is my only King. The Virgin is my refuge. Write it, proclaim it, shout it from your heart. Because heaven awaits those words from you. Stars, what began as a night of darkness, ended up revealing the enemy's entire strategy. First, he sought to enter homes, then hearts, then he confused with false signs, and finally, he raised a false guide. But throughout this entire journey, there was one constant. Those who remained under the mantle of the Virgin were never defeated. And here is our mission, to be those stars that shine until the end, even when the world mocks, even when persecution rages, even when the false guide seduces multitudes. Because our light does not come from the world, it comes from heaven. Stars, we have walked together through the warning, the darkness, the persecution, the false sign, and the appearance of the false guide. All this is not to frighten us, but to prepare us. Heaven has already given us the weapons, the rosary, the blessed candle, the proclamation of Mary's mantle, fidelity to Christ. Never forget what the Virgin said, "No family that obeys me will be left abandoned." Today you are that family. Today you are that army of light. Today you are the lights that must illuminate a divided world. And here I ask you to proclaim in the comments one last phrase as a seal of this message. I am the light of Mary, and nothing will separate me from Christ. Holy Virgin Mary, Mother of Heaven, pure mantle that covers your children, we consecrate our homes to you, our families, and our lives. Saint Michael the Archangel, Prince of the heavenly militia, defend us in battle, cover with your sword those who remain in the light, and wounds the enemy who seeks to confuse us. Lord Jesus Christ, only King, we give you our hearts, that neither darkness nor persecution, neither false signs nor false guidance separate us from your truth. Make us stars in the middle of the night. Make us beacons in the midst of the storm. Make us witnesses until the end. Amen.